All right, hello. My name is Gabe Jordan, and I'm a student at Grand Valley State University, and I'm here with my psychology professor, Seif Sekalala, and we are going to be talking about his new book that he's publishing called A Social Scientific Examination of the Dynamics of Communication, Thought, and Selves.
Thank you, Jordan. But just to correct you, it's Sekalala. I'm just saying. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for agreeing to do this interview with me. And hi everybody. My name is Seif Sekalala, Dr. Seif Sekalala. I'm a social scientist. My training is mostly in communication studies, but I've also taught sociology. And as my student Gabe just mentioned, this semester I'm teaching introduction to psychology, and so very pleased to be here and to share some insights about my new book.
All right, so first question, are there any news events or like pop culture things that relate to your book? And if yes, what are your thoughts or ideas about these events and situations?
Right, good question. So two things come to mind. I mean, first of all, you got to realize that intrapersonal, when we say intra, we're going to make that very clear, right? I-N-T-R-A, intra, not inter, because interpersonal is between two people, minimum two or more people. Intrapersonal refers to communication that's mind-based, like communication to yourself, with yourself, right? And it happens all the time. And so just two random examples I can pull for you, but like there's plenty out in the news that you can choose from. First one is, for instance, with politics, right? In the United States, we just went through an election for Congress, the midterm congressional election. And these are, just picture yourself, let's say you're one of these voters who you're fervent about, let's say abortion, just random issue, right? You feel very strongly about it. And imagine you're watching TV at home and your candidate who, let's say, is for it or against it or whatever, like however that shares your opinion, is like looking like they might not make it, right? So in that moment, you're very, very you're probably scared of something. And in those are the moments where, in intense moments, either when we're sad or happy or whatever, that's when for the most part, interpersonal communication happens the most, right? So that's one example. And then the other one is, again, this is totally random, but Queen Elizabeth dying recently. And you're gonna realize that like famous people, for instance, I'm reading President Obama's book, former President Barack Obama's book, right? And they get to share their memoirs that way. They got to realize that those people are human too, and so they talk to them like they have thoughts all the time. So, and it's very tough being a public figure, right? You can imagine you're the president. So it's not like, they cannot speak their mind. They have to like parse their words very carefully, et cetera, right? So you got to wonder, when she was dying, what were her thoughts? Like in her last year, her husband died, and so you got to wonder, on a day-to-day basis, what does she think? Or even like the other members of the royal family right now, like Prince Harry, King Charles, et cetera, So these are just two random examples, but the point here is, the main takeaway is, it happens all the time. Interpersonal communication happens all the time, and so there's plenty examples that you can pick out from the news.
Okay, yeah. So while we have previously, asked you in your publication who this book is geared towards and who the ideal audience is, what are some specific situations your research can help with that you would like to expand upon?
Right. So kind of like piggybacking off of what I was just saying, right? If we know that interpersonal communication happens a lot during moments of either extreme like joy or like contentment, happiness, as well as extreme like sadness, depression, et cetera. Hello, think about it, right? Like, what do we have in the news the past couple of years? I'll give you a hint. I don't know how well you follow the news, Gabe, but Prince Harry is his campaign, him and his wife have been campaigning a lot for a certain specific issue that starts with to just kind of like trying to like be coy about it, like MH, mental health is what I'm trying to say, right? And so when you think about it, it's like you gotta wonder, like, so if people, if we know that the more people are going through tough times, they communicate more with themselves, then we can train ourselves, or professionals, psychologists, practitioners can train folks to channel their self-communication better, their interpersonal communication better, right? If you know that, and in the book, at the end, like in the second to last chapter, I do, in the final analysis, I point out the fact that there are three main types of interpersonal communication. First one, random order here, neutral. So straight with the, what's called the stream of consciousness. At any given time, heck, even when we're sleeping with REM, with the REM cycles, you're dreaming. That's technically the thoughts, right? They're dreams. And so anytime you're awake, your mind is always working. You gotta think, all right, what do I have to do? Like, wake up in the morning, oh, today I have to go do this X event, and then after that I have to study for the my psych exam, et cetera, right? But yeah, so that's neutral. And then the second type of interpersonal communication kind of category is negative. Well, let's just start with the positive ones, right? Positive. And that's when you're like going through something good, something great is happening, and you're like, yeah, I did it, right? Like so just give me an example here. Let's say you do well in your exam, you're Gabe, you're one of the smart, one of my class's best students, so you might say to yourself, yeah, right, like I did it, right? Like, and this is you talking to yourself, you don't have to be talking to your girlfriend or your mom, whatever. Then finally you have the negative forms of communication. This is when you're a Debbie Downer on yourself, right? So let's say if you failed that exam and you say to yourself, oh man, I'm the worst. I'm never gonna I'm never gonna succeed. This means that like I'm gonna fail this class or something like that. Then unfortunately you're making it to where it might become a self-fulfilling prophecy, unfortunately, right? So this is like, those are specific situations that we can where we can harness, interpersonal communication. I don't know I hope that makes sense, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Can you relate?
Yeah, I can. Especially with the part about the Debbie Downer, like I can definitely affect your performance on something, whether you're, getting down on yourself.
All of us, yeah, and it happens to all of us. Yeah, it's not just me. It's a normal part of life, but we can train ourselves to be a lot more positive.
Yeah. All right. So why do you think interpersonal communication is like commonly looked over or glossed over in in the study of communication?
Yeah, very good question. And because the quick answer is it doesn't seem, when you think about communication, what are we doing right now, right? You either think about this, or you think about when we use these, our phones, etc., right? Or email and all that, right? And as communication scholars, like when I'm teaching, I've taught in the 12 years that I've been teaching, I've taught like dozens of communication classes. I've taught the basic course, that's a mixture of public speaking and communication theory. I've taught persuasion, I've taught intercultural communication. So when you're looking at, like, when you're taking, like, at some point, Gabe, you might take the basic course to school, because a lot of schools, it's a required course. And usually chapter 1 or 2, they look at the major types of communication. Interpersonal is, they look at it, they list usually intrapersonal, they list it, but it's very, like, they don't say much about it. And then they list public communication, mediated communication, meaning forms of communication that where we use technologies, right? Computer mediated, or mediate, all those. And interpersonal, the thoughts that we have to ourselves, it's easy to overlook it because, well, it just doesn't feel like a form of communication, right? So that's what, I feel like, I believe that's the major reason. But when you really give it some critical thought, And then there's other areas of scholarship, like for instance, in psychology, they might not call it interpersonal communication. They might call it something else, right? In psychology, or other social sciences, but they do maybe like they use it and because, and to be fair, communication for the most part, our job as communication scholars is to study, interpersonal, like the way we communicate with each other. Humans are a social species, and so for sure we should focus a lot more on the inter and on the other forms, but the thoughts you have to yourself, and like as you and I as we just said, when you're either being a Debbie Downer, when you're feeling good about yourself, you're like having a good day. Obviously, that is a form of communication. We shouldn't ignore it because, as we pointed out, there's ways to harness it.
All right. So what are some examples of interpersonal communication that you believe can often be like ignored by people when they're trying to engage in this?
And that's the thing, right? So like this just kind of goes back to what we're just saying. It's pretty much easy to ignore all types, but I gotta say, in the book, I do point out the fact that, for instance, when you're thinking about it, right, it's easy to realize that, let's say, because in the book I talk about journal entries, writing journal entries, right? Like many of us keep journals or to-do lists. I point out the fact that when you think about it, in essence, to-do lists, all right, this is you writing, all right, today is November 16th. These are the things I have to do. You are talking to your current and future self, because later on you're going to look at your to-do list and you're going to cross items off the list, right? Or even sticky note, like, there's sticky notes right here. And then journals, it's also easy to kind of like that is a form of interpersonal communication. But I keep going I keep going back to the thoughts aspect. And that's why in the book, that's why this book kind of like emphasizes cognitive science, the cognitive aspect, because communication doesn't come out of thin air. It starts in our minds, in our brains, right? Humans have a superior brain where we have we can generate language. We can use language to communicate, or symbol systems, right? Like alphabet and whatnot. And then we have these, right? So, but it's easy to just get to like the mediums, all these other modes and mediums of communication. And then it's easy to gloss over the fact that, hello, it starts here, right? It starts in your mind. So I think that I gotta like kind of keep hitting that, keep emphasizing that, just because it's true when you think about it, right? Like it's just easy to ignore thoughts, well, that's not communication. You know what I'm saying? Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. All right. Do you think interpersonal communication has like changed or like evolved in recent years, and like how we've been like talking to ourselves, and if so, in what ways?
Good one. Another great question. So I think you can relate that question, like to answer that question, you got to think about the way technology keeps evolving, right? We keep seeing new forms of technology, like social media, like today is not what it was like 10, 5, even whatever, 5, 10, how many years back, right? So it's then, when you look at the evolution of technology, like it's become more and more easy to kind of communicate with ourselves, either using your, you can maybe send I don't know, message, like you can save notes to your phone right now. Those of us that have phones that have like those features, you can save notes. You can, I don't know. I guess it's easier to write nowadays. Most of us like just use computers to like write our notes and whatnot. And so I think the evolution of interpersonal communication is inevitably linked to technology, I feel like, right? Like, and more you gotta wonder. So for instance, like I believe news reports have talked about Elon Musk investing in like, brain chips or something, like brain, like implants or whatever that can like, that can be implanted in your brain and then like can help you maybe communicate the computer or whatever, like, kind of directly to a computer or something like that, right? Like this
Mhm.
fancy stuff. So technology is like it inevitably changes how we communicate to ourselves. We're going all the way back to like when we invented writing, right? So we invented writing, like so now that was a then we could do to-do lists, so we can keep journals of events, and then the computer was a big one, right? Computer, like finally now we can it's becoming a lot more efficient. And then look at these smartphones, right? So nowadays, I think people record voice notes to themselves sometimes. In fact, the way I wrote the book, I recorded voice notes. I didn't use my phone, but I did have I bought a special like audio digital recorder, and it's what I use, and then I transcribed. So technology, I believe, is the biggest overall. It's the biggest like factor that that we have to look at when we think about uh, you know how interpersonal communication changes over the years.
Yeah, I have one follow-up question to that. Do you think that the advancements and evolution of technology throughout the years, do you think that's hindered or helped our ability of interpersonal communication?
Ooh, nice one, Gabe. And as any decent academic, I'm gonna say yes and no, right? But in all seriousness, think about it. It's both a hindrance and like so. For instance, it's a hindrance. It's negative because like you're my student now. You're one of my nicest, better, like more attentive students. But what do you guys do usually when you're in class with this thing? You guys are usually like that, right? Like so. That's one way. I mean, I guess normally that's you texting, but like also, yeah, well, as we just argued, the fact that thoughts like interpersonal communication starts off as intra. So like I'm just saying the fact that that's one way like the way technology has kind of made it worse, like because we're channeling it in the wrong ways, right? And then I don't know, and then but then like of course at the same time it's better because it's easier to like record our thoughts for to-do lists, like like I talked about the notes app and these and that kind of thing. So it's both. It's really it hinges on how like how the person kind of utilize. It's up to us to either use it in a positive way, right? And or to realize like and so that's why we should study more all the more, because like if we know that, all right, what these are the negative ways, these are positive ways, then as I mentioned earlier, we can harness our effort. We can try to like just improve our use of interpersonal communication. Those are very good questions, Gabe. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you for talking about it. Enjoyed it.
Thank you so much. I know you're not gonna read the book, but I was thank you for interviewing me about it, and I hope folks enjoy it. It's really I poured my heart and soul into it, so to speak. I have it right here. And it's easy to read actually for an academic book. Folks will be pleasantly surprised. You just kind of the publisher, the publisher's website, and I had the kind of like the here it is. Like so, when you go to the publish, it's easy. You can just look through and these lots of free stuff, free kind of like appetizers or something. I don't know how do you say it? Like basically ways of like sections like free, like the preface and stuff. All of them are free. The appendices, there's actually even a fiction story. So actually it's like a short story in there. Oh, so I wasn't sharing the screen just now. But anyway, I really enjoyed writing it, and I hope folks enjoy it. And I'll keep on, over the next several years, I hope continue with the research. So thank you so much. Really appreciate
thank you
for having me. All right, thank you so much, Gabe. Have a good night. All right.
Yeah, you too.
All right, bye now.